Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us at the SolEx Partner Expo. This presentation is on controlled change management. We have two additional presentations available during the SolEx Expo: document automation and controlled document lifecycle. In this presentation, we will be covering how GCI Power Tools for Deployments is the definitive tool needed for a controlled change management solution. With me today is Jeff Lang, my business partner, and my name is Tom Lilly. During this presentation, we will be describing and showing how you can use Power Tools for Deployments to transfer parts or complete applications from one environment to another. Most organizations have a multi-tiered approach to change management. Most commonly, a development environment, a test environment, and a production environment. Some will have additional environments like sandbox or pre-production or training. We know one customer who has 12 of these environments. Our product allows you to automate the promotion of changes from one environment to the next. Similar to SAP's transport, we can transfer module settings from a growing list of supported modules like ASM, CRT, RM, and more. We still offer the ability to transfer all open text object types from one environment to the next. So what are we talking here? We're really talking about how you can get your applications or other changes from one environment to the other. Today, you've got a couple of different choices. You can do this manually, moving them from your sandbox to your dev, to your test, to your production. You can use tools like the Open Text Transport utility. That covers about half of the different object types. It doesn't help you at all with the module settings. You can use Object Importer or Exporter. That will help you with a variety of the object types, but not all of them. It doesn't help you at all with the module settings. And with both of those options, you still have to manually reconnect the objects that you've moved. Most of you will know that there's an object ID behind every object in Content Server. And whenever you add a new item to Content Server, it assigns a new object ID. With most tools, those object IDs will change when you go from one version to the next. And now if you've connected a web report or a live report or some form to a given object ID in your test environment, it won't work when you get to production. That is not the case with our tool. We've got this thing we call Referential Integrity, which is a post-processing event that happens, and what we do is take the original object IDs and map them to the new object IDs. And we go through live reports and web reports and forms and whatnot to make sure that they all get resynchronized. So you don't have to do any of that manually. So literally, you can take information from one environment, put it to the other, let the post-processing finish, assuming no errors, and the system will just work. We've seen a lot of customers find this to be extremely helpful, going from a dev to a test to a production. You can do this whenever you're also migrating from one version to the next, and we're going to go into more details about that later. This is just a bit of an overview of all the different object types in a standard content server environment. All of these are handled with our product. We do believe there are some we have missed, so this isn't an all-inclusive list. And especially for those of you who have custom modules, if they follow the XML node interface standards published by OpenText, these custom modules should import as well. Okay, Now for module settings, I'm going to let Jeff take over. Jeff?
Okay, so what we're looking here is part of the interface for Power Tools for Deployments. We should mention that Power Tools for Deployments has been in production environments for over 15 years, and it's all based on the XML export-import subsystems that are native to Content Server. So this is our simple UI that is point and click configuration to create your exports and your imports. There's no complex migration scripts to write. Everything is point and click select to create the import. It's both smart UI and cloud friendly. What we're looking at here is the ability to export some of the module settings. We've selected modules for export, and in this case, we've highlighted the OpenText Advanced State Management module. And this module has a lot of configuration that needs to be done in order to get it to work. So you can see here that you're allowed to select a subset of configurations from that module based on organizational units, programs, or process flows that you'd like to export to be imported into the target system. This way, if you're adding an additional application to a current system, you won't be overwriting their existing data. You will just be adding your new data that go along with this application. And in the bottom, it just shows some of the CRT, the control revision type mappings associated, and those were also imported using Power Tools for Deployments.
Okay, so next we're going to see a short video, about 12 minutes long, I believe, that's going to cover how the product works to copy module settings from one environment to the next. Anything you need to say to set up the video, Jeff, or is it self-explanatory?
No, it does it all itself. It's not just copying a module setting. It does a real application install of XCCM for engineering application, and then explains that.
Awesome. Okay, off to the video.
This is a short demonstration of the Globalsense product, GCI Power Tools for Deployments. This product allows you to take an application that was deployed on a separate Content Server instance and install it on the desired Content Server instance. So to get started, we'll start with our importing of our application. The application was sent to me by the developer, and I've uploaded it to the Power Packages folder as a GCI Power Tools for Deployments Power Package item. And now that it's there, I can go into the Tools menu, go to Deployments, which allows me to download that Power Package to the server so that it could be used for the import. I will choose to download it into the import directory, and I will select it. And now that it's been downloaded to the server, it should show up and be available for use. As with any application, the first thing you do is create the users and groups that are going to be necessary for that application for permissions and other items. So we'll import all the users and groups. On the status page, we'll choose our refresh rate. And I have a feeling it's already done. So at this point, we imported 8 users and 11 groups that were necessary for this application. Now we return back to the Power Tools for Deployments dashboard. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import some module settings because this is a clean instance and it hasn't had anything installed on it yet. So if you notice in our import that we're trying to use, there are multiple parts to the module settings. The reason that there are multiple parts is because these settings must be entered at different times in the system. In this case, we're going to be importing the settings for the automatic document numbering system and the OpenText recipients modules. After we've imported the categories and classifications, we'll be importing the module settings for the document templates and the transmittals. And then finally, for the OpenText Advanced State Management and Control Revision Tracking modules. They must be done in this order because each one of these module lists depends on different items existing in Content Server so that they could be selected as part of the configuration. So if we want to take a look quickly at what's in the ADN currently, the major part here is the organizational units, and you can see that we only have the standard default organizational unit. So we'll go back and we'll import our module settings. Once again, choosing our refresh rate, and that is finished. We'll go back to our dashboard, and if we come back over here and refresh the page for our organizational units, you'll see that we've now imported the organizational units that were exported for this application. Now back at the Power Tools for Deployments dashboard, we begin importing the items that make up our application. And you can see this is a rather large application. It happens to be an XECM for engineering application. So that's why there's so many parts. We'll start off importing the categories and then the classifications. After that, we'll do the CAD manager configurations and then the workspace types. And after that, the contacts for the transmittal. Then we'll start with the templates that are necessary for the XECM for engineering application. In this case, they're business workspace objects. So without further ado, let's get started with our import. We choose the node list we want to use. We're going to say reference existing items just in case in our export someone sent us an item that we already have existing on that already exists in our current system, and we don't want it to report an error that it already exists. So we'll say just reference it if it exists, and then we'll choose incomplete import because this is not the last item in our list. This option also has another important part that we'll talk about later. And we say import items. And on our import items page, we'll just go back and reset our refresh rate as our items are being imported. As you can see, our items have been imported. It's taken less than a minute to import the categories for this application. And we'll move on and we'll look at the classifications and we'll import those. So we'll choose the same two import options again. Say import items. And then once again, we'll come to this page and set our refresh rate. The items have imported. And so now that we have our categories and classifications, that will give us the ability now to import more of our module settings. So we go back to the module settings import, and we could choose our second set of modules settings. Document templates and OpenText transmittals depend on categories and classifications existing. So we will just say import those modules, the settings for those modules, and set our refresh rate, and those are completed. Now we can go back and continue importing the other objects that make up our application. So we are now on node list 3, which is the CAD manager information. And once again, we just select our options and choose our refresh rate. Already finished. It's quite quick to import. Here are our workspace types for the XECM modules. And refresh our page. That one is already finished. Moving on to the next part, which is our contacts list for the transmittals module, the objects that are necessary for transmittals. And refreshing once again. I think it's probably already, a little slow. There we go, now we're done. And we'll continue to move on. I'll come back after all the rest of these items are imported. Okay, I've imported all of the items except for the last item in the list. But before I do that, I want to go and import the last of my module settings. And these are the module settings for the advanced state management and the control revision tracking modules. We could actually take a look at that. Oh, before we do that, we could see that all of our categories for this application have been imported, along with all of our classifications. that were necessary, all of the objects that make up the system, as well as our document templates. So let's take a look at the ASM. And currently, we don't have any process flows imported or distribution matrices. And if we take a look at the CRT, we just have the core standard revision types, and I think no programs. Look at we have our organizational unit, but no programs created. So let's do the import for these objects. Because control revision tracking comes with default data, we're going to say update the existing so that we don't mess with our default data. We just add the new module settings. And we'll click import. And as always, choose our page refresh rate. That's imported. So we'll return back to the deployments menu, and we can come over here and look for our revision types for our CRT. You see we've imported all of the new revision types, and let's check to make sure our programs have been imported. And oh, yep, we do have a program imported. And for advanced state management, we can look to see that our process flows. We have our process flow with all of the states and the transitions and all of the data that goes along with all of that information has all been imported. So we're good to go to the last part of our import. So we will import the last item in our list. And for this item, we're going to choose reference existing, and now we don't choose incomplete import because incomplete import runs a special thing called post-processing operations. This only should run at the end of your import, and it's very important. And as soon as the import's completed, we'll talk about it more. Okay, our final import has finished. What's so important about the incomplete import and the final import is that it runs the as I mentioned, runs the post-processing operations. This is an important operation. What it does is it looks at all of the items that were imported, and for specific item types, it will actually open their definitions and look for them through them for hard-coded IDs and replace them. So these are especially important for things like workflow maps and live reports and custom views and web reports. So as an example, perhaps you have live reports that report on category data in the system. To create the SQL for that, you have to define the ID of the category node so you know which category to look for. The post-processing operation will actually open all of your live reports and then look through them for, say in this instance, the category ID, and replace the ID from the source system with the ID of the target system. So after the post-processing is done, after your import, everything is relinked together and it maintains your referential integrity. So the last thing I'd like to point out for as part of the deployment is at the end of the deployment, also during post-processing, an import report gets created. So let's upload that import report so we can actually take a look at it. I'm going to choose that and I'm going to import it into my import reports folder. So now I can look in my import reports folder, and here's my import report, and let's just take a look at it. So you can see it shows me all the newly created items, tells me the item's name and what type it is, along with its new ID and the full path to where that item was created. If we look here, there's a number of them. And if an item has versions associated with it, it will tell me how many versions were added. So you can see there are a lot of items here. This was a bit of a large import. And at the bottom of the import, that would show you any items that already existed that were updated. In this case, we just added all new items. So that is the demonstration of GCI Power Tools for deployments. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jeff. That was very informative. So to summarize, controlled change management, or Power Tools for deployments, really reduces your platform maintenance costs. We've had customers report between 35 and 135% improvement, or reduction, I should say, in their management costs. Clearly, this reduces human errors as it can be all automated. It will speed your application changes, getting them into production faster, and it minimizes your documentation effort, where before you'd have to type up pages and pages of changes. It's basically doing screenshots and explaining what needs to be done. Our system is also version and database independent, which is, again, the only tool on the market that we're aware of that is independent of the databases and the versions. So if you need to move your applications from a dev system that might be running SQL Server into an Oracle environment, that's possible. If you have different versions of your sandbox or deployment development environments, that's not a problem either. This truly enables agile development for people who are really worrying about that continuous integration and continuous deployments. This is a must-have tool. To get more information, you can go to our website, so globalsense.com/controlled change management or globalsense.com/PTD. You'll also find on there a Contact Us link where you can ask additional questions. You'll find other white papers and additional information. You can also use that Contact Us to schedule a demonstration, and we'd be happy to tailor it to your specific needs. So who is Globalsense? Well, we've been around for over 15 years. We've been a technology partner with OpenText from the beginning. About 5 years ago, we became a SolEx partner, which means OpenText does resell some of our products and supports them around the world. We've been called a leader when it comes to highly regulated or capital-intensive industries. We have a lot of our staff that have been working on Content Server or LiveLink, its predecessor, for 25 or 30 years. And our mission really is to empower customers to thrive in a regulated world. So we've covered all of these benefits, I think, in this presentation. Just to recap, this is an enterprise-grade tool. It's been in production for over 15 years and has had thousands of successful deployments. It transfers module settings for a set of modules, as well as all the content types for OpenText Content Suite and Extended ECM. It can combine content suites. So if you're doing a centralization effort and need to move content from 2 production environments into 1, the tool can be used for that. The tool can also be used for decentralization. So if you're splitting a single production environment into 1 or many different production sites, the tool can be used for that. We can handle extremely large migrations. So we've had a customer do some performance testing, and they were able to get over 50,000 objects per hour to be transferred from one environment to the next. Clearly, this is very system dependent and your mileage may vary. And all of our customers have reported a reduction in operating costs. So overall, improving your return on investment with your OpenText Content Suite. So for Jeff Lang, this is Tom Lilly. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this presentation. We really appreciate your time and effort in keeping Content Server and Content Suite alive and well, and we are here to help. So please reach out to us and let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Thank you.